Welcome to the Upside Down Kingdom, episode 7 of 15, phase 1, personal idols. Last episode, the weapon you refuse to pick up suffering. Today, the Ananias test. God tells Ananias to go heal Saul, the man hunting Christians. Ananias argues with God, not because he's wrong, because his ego is dressed up as wisdom.
It is the pivotal moment of the early church. And if we just look back at episode 6 to ground us for a second, we talked about suffering as an offensive weapon. We basically established that you become ungovernable when sin loses its leverage over you. When you're not afraid of pain anymore, you become really dangerous to the enemy.
Exactly. And today we're taking that whole concept, being ungovernable, and we're applying it to the one thing we all trust more than God.
Our own judgment.
Our own good judgment.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, I just have to drop our standard disclaimer. We're practitioners, not theologians. We're teaching from the Valley, 2 months into intensive Bible study.
Yeah, we're in the mud with you on this. We're not, shouting from some mountaintop. We are wrestling through the text. And today, I think the text is wrestling back.
Yeah.
We're in Acts chapter 9.
Acts 9, the conversion of Saul. And look, everyone knows the headline, Bright Light, Road to Damascus, Saul becomes Paul. It's the classic Sunday school story.
Right.
But we aren't looking at Saul today. We're actually looking at the other guy, the supporting actor, Ananias.
And it is so crucial to understand just how supporting he is, because when we say Ananias, most people, they just nod. They think, oh yeah, the guy who prayed for Paul. But we really need to look at who he was or who he wasn't.
Well, that's the thing. If you stick to the text, he's a nobody. The Bible introduces him as a certain disciple at Damascus. That's it.
That's all you get.
He isn't an apostle. He isn't a deacon. He's not famous. He's just a guy.
He is the definition of a rank-and-file believer. He doesn't have a platform. He doesn't have a title. He isn't Peter or John. But God chooses him for a mission that, you can argue, changes the entire trajectory of human history.
So let's set the scene here. Saul of Tarsus, who we all know later becomes the Apostle Paul, is currently a religious terrorist. And that is not an exaggeration.
Yeah, not at all.
Acts 9 says he is breathing threats and murder against the disciples. He has arrest warrants in his pocket. He is on his way to Damascus for the specific purpose of dragging people like Ananias back to Jerusalem.
In chains.
In chains.
The threat level is just, it's severe. This isn't someone who posts mean things about Christians online. This is a man who sanctioned the execution of Stephen. He's a killer.
Yeah.
And he's coming to Ananias' city with the full backing of the state.
And right in the middle of all this terror, God speaks to Ananias.
We need to pause on how he speaks. Acts 9:7 says the Lord spoke to him in a vision. Now, we tend to gloss over that word, but the Greek term used here is órama. That's H-O-Rama.
Órama.
Yes, it means a spectacle, a sight, a divinely granted vision. It's objective. This isn't Ananias having a sense in his spirit or a nudge.
Right, it's not a weird dream he had because he ate pizza too late.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is an external, high-definition command.
So there's no ambiguity. He knows it's God. There's no wiggle room to say, oh, maybe that was just my subconscious.
Zero ambiguity. The signal is crystal clear, and the message is so specific. Arise and go to the street called Straight, and inquire at the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus, for behold, he is praying.
Go to this address. Find this man, the man who's coming to kill you. And Ananias hears this, and his response is, well, it's relatable, he argues.
He does. Just look at verse 13. Lord, I've heard from many about this man, how much harm he has done to your saints in Jerusalem.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a minute, because I'm actually with Ananias on this one. This isn't just disobedience. This is it's basic survival. If some guy is coming to kill me and my friends, and I hear a voice saying, go knock on his door, I'm going to hesitate. I get heart obedience. But there's also discernment, right? I have to protect my peace, guard my family. God gave me a brain for a reason.
And right there, that is the trap. That is exactly why we call this the Ananias test, what you just said. It sounds like wisdom. It sounds like prudence. Lord, surely you don't mean that guy. He's dangerous. He's the enemy.
But Ananias is presenting facts. He says, and here he has authority from the chief priests to bind all who call on your name. He's literally reading God, the police report on Saul. He's saying, God, in case you missed the intel.
He is, but let's look at what's really happening under the surface. Ananias isn't just sharing fear. He is arguing theology with God. He is using his knowledge, his discernment, to correct the Almighty.
Correct the Almighty. That feels like a stretch. He's just scared.
Is he? Or is he confident in his assessment of the situation? He believes his risk analysis is more accurate than God's command. He thinks his job is to analyze the safety of the mission before he accepts it. But God didn't ask for a risk assessment. He issued a command.
Ouch. Okay, so
Yeah.
so what you're saying is that sometimes what we call discernment, oh, I just don't have peace about that, or that doesn't align with my calling right now. That's actually just us masking our own self-preservation.
Often, yes. We are masters at wrapping our fear in spiritual language. We say, I'm guarding my heart, when really we're just refusing to pick up the cross. We say, I'm setting a healthy boundary, when really we are refusing to go where God sent us.
That's so confronting. Because in modern church culture, boundaries are basically treated like a fruit of the Spirit. We are taught to cut toxic people out. Ananias is trying to keep the most toxic person alive away from him.
And God interrupts him. Look at verse 15. God doesn't debate the risk. He doesn't say, oh, don't worry, Ananias, it's safe. He simply says, go, for he is a chosen vessel of mine.
Go, it's just a hard stop.
And it completely dismantles the idol of understanding. This connects directly to a Hebrew concept from Proverbs 3:5-6. We all know the verse. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding.
I've heard that verse 1,000 times. It's on every graduation card and coffee mug.
Sure, but let's look at that Hebrew word for understanding. It's binah. That's B-N-A-H.
Binah.
Binah. It refers to insight, discernment, the ability to process data and come to a logical conclusion. It's your intelligence. It's your internal risk assessment algorithm, the part of your brain that says, fire is hot, don't touch it.
So the verse is saying, lean not on your own binah. Don't lean on your own logic.
Exactly. The sin wasn't that Ananias was afraid. Fear is a biological reaction. That's not sin. The sin is that he leaned on his binah, his rational calculation that Saul was a threat. He leaned on that over the voice of God. He trusted his data more than the commander.
That hits home, I'm realizing. Every single time I've analyzed a command from God and said, well, that doesn't make sense for my career, or that's going to be really awkward socially, I've been worshiping my binah. I've been putting my own logic on the throne.
You've been setting up your intellect as an idol. And this gets even sharper when we bring in Jesus' words in Luke 14:26. This is the hate your own life passage.
Oh, man. The one everyone tries to soften or explain away.
Yeah.
If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple.
We have to deal with that word hate. The Greek is misej, mikeriso.
Misej.
Now, context is everything. It doesn't mean emotional malice. You aren't supposed to actively despise your family. It's talking about a radical hierarchy of allegiance.
A hierarchy. So it's about comparison.
Yes. It means that in comparison to your obedience to Christ, your attachment to everything else, your family, your reputation, your own physical safety, it must look like hate. It means if the choice is between preserving your life and obeying Jesus, you choose obedience every single time, even if it looks reckless to everyone else.
That is intense. It basically means you cannot be a disciple if self-preservation outranks obedience.
Correct. If your no is based on this will hurt me or this is too dangerous, you have disqualified yourself from discipleship in that moment. And that is the Ananias test.
So the test isn't, will you go to the mission field? Or will you tithe?
No. The test is, will you go to the person who wants you dead? Will you go to the person who destroyed your reputation? Will you go to the person your minus says is a threat simply because I said so?
It's the incarnation of love your enemies. Matthew 5:44.
Precisely. It's easy to love your enemies in theory from a distance while you're posting about forgiveness on social media. It is another thing entirely to walk down the street called straight, which was the main drag in Damascus, knock on the door, and lay hands on the man who has a warrant for your arrest.
And call him brother. That's what Ananias does, right? Verse 17, brother Saul.
He does. He bridges that gap instantly. And that brings us to another massive point here, the nobody framework. Because we have to ask the question, why Ananias?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Peter's around. The other apostles are in the region. Why send this random disciple? Why not send a peer to handle Saul? Send Peter to debate him. Send John to love on him.
Look at 1 Corinthians 1, verses 27-29. God has chosen the foolish things of the world to put to shame the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame the things which are mighty.
So Ananias is the weak thing in this story.
In the world's eyes, absolutely. Think about the contrast. Ananias is the nobody. Saul is the VIP. Saul is a Pharisee of Pharisees, educated by the best, politically connected, feared. He is a great man of his time. And Ananias is just a guy who listens.
It seems so backwards. We live in a culture that is obsessed with influence. We think, oh, if we can just get that famous celebrity saved, think of the impact. We want a famous Christian to reach the famous non-Christian.
But the kingdom is always upside down. God sends the unknown disciple to the religious terrorist. Why? To prove that kingdom power flows through obedience, not through credibility. It flows through surrender, not status.
That's a massive blow to our whole celebrity pastor culture. We act like the size of your platform determines the effectiveness of your ministry.
It is. But God used a nobody to save the influencer. Without Ananias, there is no Paul. And this brings up another Greek term we need to look at. Kenodoxia. Kenodox.
Kenodoxia. Okay, unpack that for us.
It's found in Philippians 2, verse 3. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit. The word for conceit there is kenodoxia. It literally translates to vainglory or empty glory.
Empty glory.
It's that hunger for validation, the need to be the one who gets the credit. If Ananias had kenodoxia, he might have refused the mission because it wasn't glamorous enough. Or maybe he would have tried to negotiate a better role. Lord, can I be the one who preaches the first sermon to him? Why do I just have to go pray for this guy in a dark room?
I want the stage, not the bedside.
Exactly. But Ananias didn't have kenodoxia. He had fear, for sure. But he didn't have empty ambition. He argued, but eventually he surrendered. He didn't need to be the hero of the story. He just needed to be obedient.
You know, I'm realizing something really uncomfortable right now. I've obeyed God into hard things before. I've worked hard. I've sacrificed sleep and money. But I don't think I've ever obeyed into humiliation.
That is a really profound distinction.
I've never gone to my Saul. I've never gone to the person who humiliated me or tried to ruin my career and bless them. I've avoided them. I've, protected my peace. I've used my bina to keep me safe from them.
And that's where the idol of platform clashes with the reality of obedience. We think our calling is our gifting, what we're good at, what people applaud us for. But in the kingdom, your calling is simply obeying the next command, even if that command is go heal the guy who wants to kill you, even if it makes no sense for your career path.
It reminds me of Jonah. We talked about him briefly in our prep for this. It's the same dynamic, isn't it?
It is. Jonah is the Old Testament version of this test, that he initially fails. God says, go to Nineveh. Nineveh was the capital of Assyria, a brutal, violent empire. They were the mortal enemy of Israel. Jonah's discernment, his bina, told him, no way, they are monsters. They don't deserve mercy.
So his discernment was actually just nationalism. It was ego.
Exactly. He wrapped his hatred in theological correctness. I knew that you are a gracious and merciful God, he says later. He didn't want his enemies saved. Ananias wrestled with the same impulse. Lord, look at the harm he has done. He was basically saying, Lord, this man doesn't deserve a visit. He deserves judgment.
And then there's Peter in Acts 10, the vision of the sheep with all the animals.
Another Ananias test moment. Peter's hungry. God shows him a vision of non-kosher animals and says, rise, Peter, kill and eat. And Peter argues, not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything common or unclean.
He's quoting the Bible back to God. He's quoting Leviticus to the author of Leviticus.
He is using holiness as a shield against obedience. He thinks his adherence to the law, his religious resume, gives him the right to say no to God. He thinks he understands holiness better than God does, and God has to tell him, what God has cleansed, you must not call common.
Wow. That connects right back to Ananias. He wanted to call Saul enemy. God called him vessel.
Precisely. You cannot call common or enemy what God has decided to use. When we do that, we are setting ourselves up as the judge. We are stepping onto the throne, and that is the ultimate idol.
Man, this is heavy. I want to just take a second to look at where we are in the season. We are in episode 7. This is the finale of phase 1.
Yes. For 7 episodes now, we have been dismantling personal idols. We've looked at the idol of logic, the idol of comfort, the idol of reputation, and now the idol of discernment or understanding.
It feels like we've stripped everything away, exposed.
That's the point. Phase 1 is about personal breaking. It's about getting down to the bedrock of surrender. Because in the next phase, episodes 8 through 14, we are going to turn this lens outward. We are going to demolish the systemic idols in the church.
The church you built without God.
Exactly. But you cannot address the system until you have addressed the self. If you try to fix the church while you're still holding on to your own bina, your own understanding, you'll just build another idol. You'll just build a safer church that still doesn't obey God. You can't lead a movement of surrender if you are still negotiating your own obedience.
I have to be honest. Coming into this, I was ready to defend boundaries. I was ready to say, yeah, but abuse is real and toxic people are real, and they are. We're not denying that wisdom exists.
Wisdom exists, but wisdom is a servant, not a master.
But I realize now, I thought I was protecting my ministry. I was actually protecting my ego. I was protecting my right to decide who is worthy of my time and my energy.
And that is the surrender. When you realize that your ministry isn't yours to protect, it's his. And if he sends you into the lion's den, then the lion's den is the safest place on earth for you. If he sends you to the street called straight, that is where the miracle is.
Ananias went. That's the end of the story, right? He went.
He went, and Ananias went his way and entered the house, and laying his hands on him, he said, "Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus has sent me."
He touched him. He laid hands on the terrorist.
That physical touch. That must have been terrifying. It goes against every human instinct.
And beautiful. And Scripture says something like, scales fell from Saul's eyes. But I often wonder, did scales fall from Ananias' eyes too?
Wow. Yeah. The scales of fear. The scales of prejudice.
He saw a murderer. God saw an apostle. Ananias had to go blind to his own blindness so that he could see what God saw. He had to lose his vision of reality to gain God's vision for the kingdom.
So what does this mean for you listening right now? Because most of us aren't being asked to go visit a literal terrorist in Syria.
No, but we all have a Saul.
The Saul in your story. This is the diagnostic. Who is the person in your life that you feel completely justified in avoiding? Who is the person that if God told you to go bless them or serve them or help them, you would immediately argue with God about?
But Lord, you know what they did to me. You know how toxic they are. You know they gossiped about me.
Exactly. Lord, I have heard from many about this person. We have the dossier. We have the receipts. We have the screenshots. And we hold on to them like a shield.
And we call it wisdom.
We call it wisdom. We call it boundaries. We call it healthy distance. But if God is speaking and we're arguing, it is just rebellion. It is kenodoxia ego protecting itself.
And the scary part is, if Ananias had said no, if he had stayed home to protect his peace,
he would have remained a disciple at Damascus. Safe, comfortable, alive. He would have lived a nice, quiet life. And he would have missed being the catalyst for the greatest missionary movement in history. He would have missed the miracle.
He would have kept his bina, but he would have lost the kingdom.
And that is the choice. Every single day, will you lean on your understanding, or will you trust the voice? Will you cling to your rights, or will you follow the command?
This brings us to the end of phase 1. And I feel like... I feel like we are leaving this phase with a limp.
Good. Jacob limped after he wrestled with God. A limp means you've encountered something real. A limp means you aren't running on your own strength anymore. You have to lean on him. You're slower, maybe, but you're substantive.
So, as we wrap up, I just want to leave you with this challenge, the Ananias test.
Yeah.
It isn't a theory. It's a question waiting for an answer.
Here's your diagnostic. Who is your Saul? The person that if God told you to go serve them, bless them, lay hands on them, you would argue with God about. Not because you're wrong about them, but because your ego is dressed up as discernment. That's the Ananias test. If you can't name your Saul, you're lying to yourself. We all have one. The question is, will you go when God says go?
Phase 1 is done. The personal idols are rubble, but the work isn't over. Next time, we step out of the mirror and we look at the structure. Episode 8, the church you built without God. Phase 2 begins. What happens when the Holy Spirit leaves the building and no one notices? You do not want to miss it.